So as I said, there are particular abilities, the emotional intelligence skill set that I want to share with you. And the coaches, you can consider whether the people you're coaching have strengths or limits in these particular areas. Let's start with those that are in the self-awareness and self-management set. The first is self-awareness itself. As I said, this is actually the keystone, the foundation of all emotional intelligence. People with this skill, with this ability, they know what they're feeling, what they're thinking. They know how that's impacting what they're doing. They're in touch with their values. They're in touch with their guiding sense of purpose. So there was an interesting medical case I want to tell you about. It has to do with self-awareness. There was an absolutely brilliant corporate lawyer who unfortunately had a tumor in the prefrontal area. Luckily, it was caught early, operated on successfully. But during the surgery, they had to disconnect, create a lesion between the prefrontal area and the amygdala. After surgery, it was very puzzling because on every test of intelligence, attention, and so on, there was nothing wrong with the lawyer. But he couldn't do his job anymore. He lost his job, couldn't keep any job. His wife left him. He lost his house. Ends up living in his brother's spare bedroom, and he goes to a famous neurologist, Antonio Damasio, who specializes in this circuitry. He says, "Doctor, what's wrong with me?" And at first, the doctor can't tell. There's nothing wrong in any test. Then he gets a clue. The clue is when he says to the lawyer, "When should we have our next appointment?" That lawyer can tell him the logical pros and cons of every hour for the next 2 weeks, but he can't decide which is best. Damasio says, when we make a decision in life, a real life decision, should I leave this job for another? Should I marry this guy compared to all the other guys I've dated? We don't have full data. The data we need comes from inside. It turns out as we go through life, very ancient parts of the brain, near the brainstem, the basal ganglia and so on, capture a lesson for us. When I said that, it worked really well. When I did that, it didn't work. It makes decision rules. When we face a decision, it summates all of that and sends us the answer from our own wisdom in life, our own experience. There's a problem, though. That part of the brain has no connection to the part of the brain that thinks in words. It has very rich connection to the gut, to the GI tract, gastrointestinal tract. We get the answer as a felt sense, a feeling in the gut. It feels right. It doesn't feel right. Damasio says this is data too. It's not that you ignore everything else, but you have to listen to your own life wisdom. There was a study done at the University of Southern California. Entrepreneurs who built a business from nothing to hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. They asked, how do you make your decisions? All of them said they have enormous curiosity. They gathered as much information as they could find, anything, anywhere. They looked at the spreadsheets. And then they all said, but if it doesn't feel right, I won't go ahead with the deal. Why is that? The reason is there are intangibles in business. Even when there's data, can we trust this person? What do you think is going to happen in the future? What's your best bet? We never know. We can only speculate. And these entrepreneurs used that as a kind of marker. Should I go ahead or should I not? So I mentioned that I grew up in a farming region in California. And I've gotten to know a fellow who, about my age, who grew up in the next town. He was a terrible student in high school. In fact, he almost flunked out. He went to a local 2-year college. He took a film course, and it turned out he realized he would love film, and he was pretty good at it. He got into a film school. He made a student film that caught the eye of a director who hired him as a production assistant. It's the lowest position in film. But he did really well, and this director talked the studio into financing a film based on a script this guy had done and let him direct. They almost didn't release it, but turned out when they did release it, it was a hit. He made a lot of money. But he hated the way the studio did what's called final cut. They edited out things he thought were really important. So he decided to make another film, but he said, I want to have creative control. So he did it outside the Hollywood system. People there said, you are crazy. You don't risk your own money on a film. You risk other people's money. But he said, no, I'm going to do it. He almost didn't make it. He almost ran out of money. But he did finally. You might have seen it. It's called Star Wars. You know that movie? Yeah. So George Lucas is someone who made a value decision. He wanted creative control that turned out to be a really smart business decision. But that's not why he made it. He made it because he felt he was an artist, and he wanted to tell the story his way. But this is another ability that self-awareness gives us. The ability to sense our values, our guiding values in life, which is extremely, extremely important. There's another ability based on self-awareness and self-management. Let me talk about these 4, starting with emotional self-control. I don't like the word self-control. It's really emotional balance. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about marshaling the positive emotions and not letting the negative ones get in our way or stop us.